Welcome to a muzzled chat. Folks, we got another warrior, a soldier, a man that was willing to put his life on the line, fight, bleed, die even for this country. It's about time we set things down and pay these men the proper respect they deserve and give their stories a listen. And more than that, it's important that we spread their message wide. They're showing up in selfless manners on behalf of their other fellow comrades, on behalf of even the civilians that have met some of the egregious, tyrannical overreach and even biowarfare. All of our battles is one and in the same. And it is important that we set things down and unite and become the solution we also desperately need. Is we're kind of scream from the rooftop as a broken record here many times over. But the reality of it is, until we see that change, shouldn't we continue to do just that? So I'm really excited to have Eric on today. He's going to be exposing a lot and a cover up. He actually was a part of the AstraZeneca study, and he ended up vaccine injured. And it blows my mind, even with those that have battles now that they're fighting for their lives, they're still showing up in such a selfless manner. I'm really excited to hear everything Eric has going on that we could get behind. And I just hope we can give him the proper support. It's kind of like give you the support you need, but it's helping you helping us, you know? So Eric, welcome to Unmuzzled Chat. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
It is my honor, my pleasure. Know you signed up, you served in the Marine Corps, you ended up out there in New York. How did you get wrapped up in this AstraZeneca study? You can start wherever you'd like.
Okay, so long story short, I had in 2016 or 17-ish, I had applied for a service-connected disability claim from my in-service injuries during my time at the Marine Corps. In August of 2019, after submitting 65,000 pages of documents and briefs and having an actual hearing in front of a magistrate judge, I actually was approved. Once all that happened, I kind of registered at the VA. I was an essential worker for Fresh Direct when the pandemic actually started in the heart of New York City. I was a shuttle truck driver and a delivery driver for a company called Fresh Direct that was based out of the Bronx. And what we did was we were charged and made essential workers, and our duty was to deliver. My duties included delivering tons of food and essential goods to New York City at its worst time.
Wow, what a service.
And basically, in August of 2020, I was basically injured. I basically was placed on workman's comp. I had a knee injury. It required surgery. In order to return back to work, I had to actually receive some sort of countermeasure in the form of a COVID-19 vaccine. So upon basically, rehabilitating and going back and forth from the doctors and being on workman's comp and my service connection, I was looking for a way to actually receive the COVID-19 shot. And due to the fact that they were only giving the COVID-19 shot to those of ages 65 and above at the VA, I basically messaged one of my doctors, and they said, "Hey, Perez, we have this study called the AstraZeneca study, and you can actually see if you get the AstraZeneca, if you get the COVID-19 shot that way."
Yeah.
So December 22nd, 2020, I hobbled in there with my cane, because I was injured at the time. I hobbled in there. I filled out a bunch of paperwork. I met the study director. Her name was Melanie J. Stein.
Yeah.
Um, and basically, I received the first dose of AstraZeneca. After
Wow.
upon receiving the first dose, my blood pressure dropped and I almost fainted to the floor. I was kept in the waiting room for observation purposes. After they saw that I was okay and good to go, they said, "Hey, you can be on your way."
Wow.
So yeah, so long story short, I hobbled down East 23rd Street because it's called the AZD 1222 study. It's being held at 423 East 23rd Street in a Veterans Affairs Administration building called Harbor Healthcare.
Mm.
It's one of the biggest VA health hubs in New York City.
Wow. Did they read out any potential harmful effects, give you essentially informed consent on that shot?
Well, no, and prior to that, I had no idea even what a study was. You know what I mean? I was just
Right.
like, well, I'll just go in there and I'll get the shot. Hopefully, it's a shot, and only to find out that you actually, as a doctor, and to be involved in a study and a director of a study, you have to be peer reviewed, and you have to have several certifications in order to actually perform the actual duties that are needed as a doctor participating in a study, let alone a director. So basically, when I signed up, I had no idea that AstraZeneca had been stopped several times throughout the world because it
Yeah.
had first been rolled out to the United Kingdom. And the United Kingdom had basically reported higher incidences of blood clots and it's called thrombotic events.
Right.
So I didn't know any of this, but the directors and her boss, as part of their job, it was their job to know this. It was also
Right.
the Veterans Affairs Administration job to make sure to protect the health and well-being of its veterans.
100%. Yeah, you're hitting a nail on the head there. It's wild to me. I mean, hindsight's always 2020, right? Obviously, we all have experiences in this life where, oh, I wish I knew, if only I knew what I knew now then. And it actually does bring up some levels of importance to all of us on refining ourselves today to set us up better for the here and the now and also the future. And it's just wild to me, especially in like those hives, if you will, kind of New York City, these major cities that are pretty much infiltrated by a lot of corrupt individuals. It's interesting as to how effective they are on controlling narratives and creating kind of this hive mindset where people don't do their research. It just becomes the norm. And it's a level of social conditioning where people just, it's crazy. Like even against maybe their better judgment or their gut instinct or intuition, they just push that aside. Don't even pay that any mind and just go with the kind of herd mentality. And now we know, obviously, it's healthy to question everything. It is important and healthy that we do our research on everything, that we don't blindly entrust nobody, especially white lab coats. It's been really exposed. That's why I view the pandemic as a smoking gun and a huge blessing because it really exposed this infrastructure. Like Western medicine is business. It's not about healthcare. It's not about getting us well and getting to the roots of issues. They themselves, these doctors, are indoctrinated to feed big pharma. They're not even practicing medicine, the majority of them. There might be some in them cities, but they tend to get clients in areas that are free thinkers. So I don't know. They could be harder to find, let's just say, in some of those areas. Luckily, there have been some that have been in the know, and it does break my heart because naturally for me, I wish people knew what I knew when I knew it, and or others, but there's zero judgment. I understand, for me to be in other people's shoes, I wouldn't have known any better. And I can see in similar aspects of my own life how I just blindly herded mentality as well. So there's zero judgment. It's just important that we all hold ourselves accountable and responsible for, like, these are mega decisions, and we do our due diligence, right? Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean, you end up in there. I mean, at this point, obviously it is what it is, but luckily, like Dr. McCullough and so many others have, in fact, I just sent a couple short clips of Dr. McCullough speaking out. Well, one was Dr. McCullough and one was of this other lady, of these detoxifying things that these individuals have been doing, and it has been eradicating the spike proteins and a lot of the negative effects from, like, the vaccine injured. So I'll happily shoot you some of that. And I know that there's a lot of these doctors kind of on the cutting edge. So they're, even amongst that darkness and their, outcome of that situation, there is still some light to it. But that being said, these aren't, what would you say, adverse effects of a shot. When you really do your due diligence and research, these were intended consequences. That's where you can't have all this sheer ignorance on the level it was, and these doctors and all these individuals not doing their job. They were incentivized not to. It was just so corrupt. That's why it's so important we expose it all. And there obviously needs to be a level of accountability and everything to essentially get some level of restitution and assistance for those that are still with us, such as yourself. Thank God, because obviously there's a lot who aren't. They've even wrongfully been recorded down as, I mean, so many of them got just the died suddenly, or, they're not even honing in. They're trying to once again cover up and sweep things under the rug. But I digress. I'm doing too much talking here. We need to absorb more of what you went through, just all the things that you've been engaged in and trying to bring exposure and whatnot. You end up getting that. You didn't feel very good. You're faint. Then they release you. At what point did you start feeling other effects, and how did that hit you?
Well, the other effects came kind of immediately. I kind of developed a headache
Okay.
upon actually being injected. So long story short, as a doctor, you're there to actually, care for the patient, and you're supposed to know because you've been educated like 8 years. You go through residency, you take all these tests. You're peer reviewed. You've been tested out. You're not a spring chicken at that point. You know what I mean? And she's been with the Veterans Affairs Administration for some time. So after me showing up and hobbling in there with my cane because I had a bad knee at that point and required surgery, she observed all that. You know what I mean? She observed all that. It's kind of like second nature, right? And it gets worse. I was sent on my way. I hobbled back down 23rd Street. I got on the 6th train. I took the 6th train. I started getting faint. I started getting cold sweats. I developed an immediate headache, some sort of shortness of breath. I got to my apartment and I just sort of just passed out. So this is Christmas time, 2020. So 3 days away from Christmas.
Oh,
what was
wow.
it? A few other days away from New Year's Eve. I'm supposed to be celebrating with my family, out partying, buying gifts. I'm sitting there with flu-like symptoms, heart palpitations. I started to get pains in my liver, severe migraines, and it was horrible. It was some of the worst sickness that I've ever had in my whole life. And I was there by myself, sick as a dog in my own apartment. So long story short, I really don't know why I went back, 2020 hindsight, why I went back and got the second dose.
Oh,
Which
man.
which is I'm kicking myself in the you know what to this day
Right.
about it. It was just a hard. I was just a mess, man. Honestly, a mess.
Well, you now were even in that much more of a vulnerable state, kind of dire, like, and not knowing better, still kind of wrapped up in that mentality. This is where the psychological warfare, I mean, it's no secret. Like even the news media's over 70% of their funding was coming from like Pfizer. I mean, you saw all their commercials and such. So they were controlling the narrative. Come to find out, the fact checkers on the social media platforms such as Facebook also were funded by Pfizer. Fact checkers. Like fact checkers never were a thing until truth started coming out. I want everyone to think on that. Fact checkers weren't even a thing until a narrative, a fictional narrative, existed that they couldn't allow the truth out on. So all of a sudden, they basically deployed all these type of fact checkers, and it ended up censoring because they were effective with you and so many on controlling the narrative and stopping disinformation, misinformation, which in fact was the truth that could have set you free and helped you and educated you, because so many of the vaccine injured, boom, censored, taken down. So many of the doctors warning about this were censored. And some of these doctors faced, like, actually had their licensing and such pulled. There were even individuals that we've covered on this podcast that I could pull up their names that were even strangely, I'd say, suicided. That, you know, they were effective enough. They had a big enough following, like that one gentleman, I forget his name, that was about to do a big conference that is entirely vindicated now, but just before that was poisoned. And he voiced out that they gave me like 200 times the normal dosing, like in some type of environment. They got to him, and unfortunately he didn't live past that. And there's no coincidence, it was just before this conference where he actually was bringing the smoking gun. And I can only imagine if they hadn't done that even to that individual, or the censorship, so many of these things didn't take place, then how many like you wouldn't have gotten that, would be living more so healthily. But that, I guess I'm saying this not because we don't have the crystal ball to go back in time, but to seize the moment now on how important it is, because they're still now trying to enact the censorship on all these other things. Anyone who's standing for censoring and infringing upon our First Amendment is going to be on the wrong side of history every single freaking time. Every time. So it just breaks my heart, brother. And you don't have to beat yourself up, because we're all human, you know? We all make mistakes. I'm guilty, and I'm a stubborn one. So I've had to live out things repetitively in my life too, especially on the relational side of things, and repeated the same mistake many times till it really got to a point I had to humble myself. And that's where I attribute so much gratitude to God, because he's humbled me and given me that grace and that discernment to where I'm like, wow, I've been victimizing myself. I've been pointing the finger, but I've been the freaking problem, you know, and I've been my own problem. So it's been such a blessing to really flip things around in my personal life in that regard. Some may say it's just wisening up. Some may say it's maturing. I venture to say it's even deeper than that. We actually fall into like our life purpose and whatnot. So in a way, could be that this was your path and you're still here and you're showing up in a way, in a very powerful way, to expose corruption and not allow them. Let's not allow these rats, these freaking criminals, to cover this up. Let's not. So you end up going and getting that other one, what? Oh my gosh, what happens then?
So basically, you have to think of, like you said, it's kind of like psyop. It's kind of that environment. It's kind of coercion. I mean, I used to take the train from the South Bronx to an even worse part of the South Bronx every day on the
Wow.
6 train. I was honestly scared for my life. I didn't know what to do. I had to go. I had to get back to work somehow. I had to show them proof of a COVID-19 vaccine card. I had to, get this knee surgery. So I put off my second dose. I told them I wasn't going to come in the next scheduled date. So they scheduled me for January 19th, 2021, bringing the new year, right? I hobbled back in there. I got the second dose. I didn't feel too bad. They were aware that I was going to be getting arthroscopic knee surgery, and they still gave me the AstraZeneca vaccine. So if you don't know anything about surgeries and pre-ops and things like that, when you receive certain medications or certain things, like anything that has to do with blood thinners or a vaccine or anything like that, the doctor's supposed to tell you that we can't give this to you within a certain period of that surgery.
Mm.
I received no warning. Like I said, she was well aware that I was on a cane, that I had to have arthroscopic surgery. Never asked me when, never asked me anything like that. Hey, let's just get this done. And by the way, they took blood samples after each dose of AstraZeneca.
Mm.
So within that sample, you have kind of like a 50-50 chance of getting the AstraZeneca or getting the placebo. It's called a double blind test, right? Double blind, meaning the administrator does not know whether you're receiving the shot, right? And at that point, I was not able to actually receive any other type of countermeasure from the Veterans Affairs Administration because I was not 65 and older. So this was my best shot to actually sit there. And 2020 hindsight, I didn't know any of this. I was just like, hey, listen, I'm Superman. I'm essential worker. I'm getting all this stuff done with my bad knee. I'm going to go into surgery. I'm going to conquer the world. And that's kind of the motto and the attitude that you have as a Marine. You know what I mean? Because you're just undestructible until somebody destroys you, right?
Yeah.
And so long story short, I hobbled in there. I got it. They took my blood just like they did the first time. I hobbled back out, and we basically, in the meantime, you're supposed to kind of like call in and let them know how you're doing and fill out all this other forms when they email you online about how you're feeling. I basically forgot all about this study, and I was kind of gearing up for this arthroscopic knee surgery. And I was scared out of my mind because this is the first time I'm being put to sleep and being cut open for some sort of reason. So February 12th, I have my sister and her husband pick me up in the South Bronx, drive me to Astoria to the surgical center. And I kind of was just like having like anxiety and panic attacks along the way. I didn't know what to expect as far as whether I was going to even make it out of it, right? And I didn't even know. I didn't know about AstraZeneca. I didn't know about the thromboses. I didn't know about the blood clotting. I didn't know about any of it. I
Mm.
didn't tell my doctor. I didn't tell my surgeon. When I actually had the discussion, he said that if I had known that you had the COVID-19 shot, I would have never operated on you that day.
No kidding.
I was very groggy. They give it to you in stages. They give you the anesthesia in stages. I was taken into the operating room. All you see is this thing laid out in front of you like a cross, like you're Jesus Christ, and they
Mm.
strap you on it. And the lady just tells me, "Don't worry, Poppy, you'll make it. It's not your time yet." And I was like, just sitting there, like, okay, if you say so. And I got down, and they strapped me down, and I woke up a couple hours later with a couple of incisions on my in my knee, and I
Mm.
was in excruciating pain,
Mm.
and my calf was so swollen and full of blood. It was like purple.
Wow.
And I said, am I supposed to? Is this supposed to happen? Am I supposed to be like that? Oh, don't worry about it. It's gonna go away, right? You have your prescriptions. They're in the pharmacy. They gave me a cane. I had come in with a cane. They gave me a cane on the way out. My brother-in-law helps me into the back of his Jeep. They drive me back to the Bronx. I'm in excruciating pain. Like I've never felt this much pain a day in my life, man. I'm
Wow.
trying to tell you, it was excruciating where I was almost in tears. I was actually in tears.
Wow.
I didn't know anything. All they did was they gave me a packet. They said, "Oh, this is what you're supposed to do. Take your medicine this time, this time, this time, and you'll be all right." I didn't even go and get my medicine. I was like, you know what? Forget it. I just want to go home and lay down. After speaking to my doctor, and then because you have the follow-up visit it was about a week later, 5 days later, I rescheduled that because for some reason I was moving into my new apartment. He tells me, "Hey, you got to come in Monday. I have to see you." He sees me Monday, and this is in the office right around the corner from my new apartment. I hobble into his office. I greet him and I tell him, "Hey, I'm not feeling well. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm having really, really bad pains." And he looks at my calf, and right away he's like, "You have a thrombosis. You have to go get an emergency sonogram." So they have no emergency sonogram in the middle of the night to actually, confirm it. The next day I went to Lenox Hill Radiology. I received my sonogram and they said that I have a DVT, which is a deep vein thrombosis, that I immediately should go to the emergency room. And that was kind of like my wake up call. Like, what did I do to myself? What's going on? What really happened? That's when my eyes kind of like opened that wide. So me being the tough guy and the cheap person that I am, I didn't even go and get a cab. I was in around 86th Street 77th Street and Park Avenue, New York City. So I go in my cheap self. I hobble down the train station to the 6th train, and I take the 6th train all the way to 23rd Street. I hobble down 23rd Street to 23rd and First Avenue where the VA's. I go to the emergency room and I tell them, "Hey, listen, my doctor says I have a thrombosis and that I need immediate attention. It's an emergency." And they sit me down and they tell me, "Hey, okay." So they take my vital signs and I give them the information for Lenox Hill, and Lenox Hill shoots them over an email or access to the actual sonogram. And they say, "Wow, like you're kind of lucky to be alive." You know what I mean?
Wow.
Like that was like one of the things that they said.
Wow.
And it was just, I was just beside myself. Like I had no idea what a DVT was. I had no idea what blood clots, what my risk for a blood clot would be after actually being administered the COVID-19 shot.
Right.
I had nothing. Me being that the tough Marine. Everybody wants to be the tough guy. You know what I mean? Until somebody stops you.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's no secret. A lot of folks are walking around with them fibrous clots, and you see it. I mean, with died suddenly, even, and all the embalmers, like, wow, we've never seen this before, and it's no secret. So, did they have to perform a surgery or anything, get some of that out, or how did they address that? With just blood thinners and such, or?
I didn't actually discover this until I downloaded my medical health record. They gave me a year course of blood thinners right off the bat, a year course of blood thinners. They said I have to take these blood thinners or I could die. That the actual blood clot was big enough that if it dislodged and got into my lungs and my heart, or even traveled to my brain, I would die just like that.
Wow.
It was that level of seriousness. The disgusting fact about it afterwards, 2020 hindsight, when I recently discovered this, going through my 982 page electronic VA health record, was that the actual attendant who interviewed me found out through a mark on my record that I was actually in the AZD 1222 study. So once she found that out, what she had to do and what the procedure was that this thing had to be referred to a company by the name of RDA, Research Diagnostic Associates. Now, Research Diagnostic Associates is another foreign company associated and affiliated with the AstraZeneca biopharmaceutical company. And it's actually centered and housed in Costa Rica, right? So
Interesting.
they gave my whole record to this company, access as part of the actual AstraZeneca study. Then what they did was they marked my actual an adverse event, right? They marked it as an adverse event. And they actually said it was mild. It was a mild adverse reaction.
Wow.
And they listed the mild adverse reaction not to the AstraZeneca vaccine, but to the actual arthroscopic surgery.
Wow. Unbelievable.
It was a really wild time. I had no bulletproof vest, no gun, no taser, no pepper spray, nothing. I'm a guy with a fresh direct uniform, an orange jacket, and a fresh direct uniform, just driving these fresh direct trucks in an empty city because nobody at that time is supposed to be on the street, right?
Wow.
And let me tell you something. It was like one of those like Night of the Living Dead movies, like every
Right.
day, all night.
Unbelievable. I cannot believe they were so effective with this whole psyop. I truly believe it's the biggest intentional psyop ever throughout history. Yeah, the floodgates have opened, the information's out. We've gone over so much of it, and I just hope enough are in the know to never again. But sounds like with your situation, big cover up. They're walking in denial. So if it gets to a point for you where you started looking into legal action, right?
That's correct. So this is where things get really disgusting, in my opinion. And I'm talking about, as far as like veterans care and the right or the duty to them for the Veterans Affairs Administration and their employees to take corrective action if corrective action actually needs to be taken. What had happened was after my knee surgery and after I had gotten confirmed that I had a DVT, which is called a thrombosis, a thrombotic event, I had to actually go back to the VA to get some other appointments, and I don't recall what, but they actually did delete those appointments as well from my VA portal, right? And that's a whole nother ball of wax. I'll get to that later. But what had happened was I go back to the VA, and this is sometime in late March or early April. And I happened to just go, I went through the metal detectors and I did everything. I was still on my cane. I still had the remnants of the knee surgery, and I still didn't have function. And I go through there and I see the director, Amy J. Stein, director, AZD 122 study, full-time employee, VA, Harbor Healthcare. I saw her and I said, Melanie, no, her name is Melanie J. Stein. Melanie, I have to report to you an adverse event. I actually had after receiving this arthroscopic surgery, I developed a blood clot in my calf, right? So she says, wait for me here, wait right there, right? I waited for her there, I stood there, and within 2 minutes, no lie, within 2 minutes, she came back and she said, oh, we have to, she said, before she left me, she said, we have to unmask you, see if you actually had the shot. And she came back, and within 2 minutes, she was back to me and she said, you didn't receive AstraZeneca, you received the placebo. Now I'm questioning, wow.
Right, right.
So I had all that blood pressure drop, and I've never had anything like that happen to me again. And I've never had anything like that, and I've never felt that bad in my life.
The heart palpitations,
And then I
the
said, okay, no problem.
sweats.
And then she said, go ahead and get scheduled for the Pfizer vaccine.
Oh my gosh.
She said to me, and these were her words, you didn't receive the AstraZeneca vaccination. Go ahead and get scheduled for the Pfizer vaccination.
Wow.
Now that's even more negligence. Now she can sit there and deny it and say that she didn't know what she gave me, but she fully knew what she gave me because of my symptoms. And when you have an adverse reaction like that, you obviously receive something other than a placebo, which is some sort of saline solution, right?
100%. Like you have
100%.
recorded proof as to what you got, because that aligns with so many others that got the actual shot as well. So it's insane to me from all different angles on civilian and the military, how there has been this grand effort to cover things up, but you can't hide truth. That's where, I mean, evil has controlled narratives. They've effectively kept it, obviously, away from people's ears and hearts enough to where we haven't appropriately addressed things in this country. We haven't. And it's nice to see some states start legal proceedings and classifications of bioweapon and taking away the whole false label of a vaccine. But some other countries are even leaps and bounds ahead of us on accountability and getting things sorted. So it's just, it takes a percentage of the population to enact that proper accountability and really facing what took place. So it just goes to show how effective they still are with their censorship campaign. Already, this episode, for example, we cannot upload it. I mean, we could. It's just going to get flagged and taken down, and my account, that'll be the last straw, and I'll be banned on YouTube. Why is that? They're still trying to control the narrative. Same thing. I can't take segments out of this and upload it to TikTok. There's certain things to this day we cannot say on Facebook, or Instagram even. People need to learn to source their information. And that's where I found extreme value to the podcast realm and Rumble, True Social, and even X. That's where right here, we're trying to fight fire with fire. Because if we just went out there, we would exhaust ourselves on a personal face-to-face, screaming from the rooftops. So I'm trying to achieve this in the digital space, that basically the same grounds, fighting fire with fire, that evil has effectively manipulated people with, and bring them into the light and create the very solutions. And I just really hope our listeners can get on board with that. And that's where it's important, once again, because every story is having its own unique way of potentially preying on someone's heartstrings or exposing truth. So I commend you and admire your courage to coming on and telling your story to achieve just that. So that's insane. She's basically trying to deny you or cover up that information as to the actual shot you got. So is that what led you into legal proceedings?
Yes. So not only did she deny that, but they actually made a false entry into my vaccine records in my electronic my Veterans Affairs electronic medical record. So when I took the screenshot, it looked like, hey, listen, it says 0.5 milliliters AZD 1222 placebo. It looked like it's a placebo sign on it. So not only that, but I have both vaccines. So the 22nd of December 2020 and the 19th of January 2021 as placebo events within my vaccine record that are no longer there, that have been deleted. So those records are no longer there. So long story short, this is 2021, May of 2021. I filed something called the CICP claim, which is called the Countermeasure Injury Compensation Program, which is the only avenue of approach to actually receive any type of redress from any type of countermeasure due to the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So I file that, I file the paper claim, and then I follow it up with a pro se lawsuit in the Southern District of New York. So this is on my own book, right? I could not get a lawyer. There was no avenue. There was no legal avenues. I filed for the actual the court to actually assign me a lawyer. I filed for poor man's paperwork, which means that they're giving you the status to file this lawsuit for free. And the U.S. Marshal Service would actually serve all the papers on all the defendants. Now, I named several defendants. In that, I named Dr. Melanie J. Stein of the Veterans Affairs Administration. Meanwhile, she got paid from the Veterans Affairs Administration as a full-time federal employee, and she was getting paid from AstraZeneca. Now, wow. I filed this thing under the PrEP Act, which states that you can only file within a certain jurisdiction with a certain time frame, and you can only file if you can prove willful misconduct or willful negligence, which I believe I had proven.
These doctors are in hot water. I'm telling you, man. That's you. What do you call that? If they're taking money, they're incentivized not to fight on behalf. It's just like these doctors sold their soul. They care more about the companies that are sending money their way than the patients and what is actually taking place. This is freaking criminal. Sorry,
it gets worse. It gets worse. She actually was appointed a lawyer by the Southern District of New York, the Attorney General. His name is Assistant Attorney General Farber, right? And so basically, he was in contact with her, and she had stated that somehow she wasn't served the proper paperwork. And if you know anything about law, you can look it up. Every single lawyer that gets appointed, whether it be defendant or plaintiff, has to file paperwork that's stating that they are going to represent a certain a certain person. And Attorney General Farber actually filed that he was going to be representing Melanie J. Stein in these proceedings, right? We're shooting paperwork back and forth. Well, why I shouldn't be allowed to recoup any type of monetary damages. And we're going through case law, and this case says this, and that case says this, and there's no precedent for this, and there's no precedent for that. And long story short, the court just dismissed it due to lack of jurisdiction because the PrEP Act, they could not decide any cases in Southern District, New York, because of the PrEP Act states that the only jurisdiction that you can bring the case is in the District of Columbia. So after all that BS, I had to refile everything in the District of Columbia.
Wow. I commend you for taking that action. So many are just accepting their situation. We need more to come forward and even join suits such as yours. You could combine forces there. And enough of us, I mean, I've said for a while, actually, to some of the injured, do you want to become a millionaire? Because to a lot of them, I personally feel there's no immunity for crimes against humanity. There's not. They could say whatever. There just simply is not. And once this gets classified correctly on the world stage as a freaking bioweapon and war crimes, then it should be fairly easy. But why are people waiting? They need to seize the moment right here, right now, start initiating these things, because if not enough people onboard it, they will essentially get away with it and continue to sweep it under the rug. And I do get we need to clean out these courts, just all these officials, because, you know, I've even had personal experience in years prior, dating pre-pandemic, where essentially I was assaulted. It went against the system because it actually involved officers. I didn't even get my day in court because they were protecting their own. And they discriminated and everything too, stating, quote, if I was a woman, it would be a little different. If I was a black fella, it would be entirely different, and we would have something there. but being a privileged white boy, which we're demonized in our own country now. It's just insanity. And it's the most racist, evil ideology there is. The fact that that's even getting brought up. Like, what does that even freaking matter to, like, we got the footage. Doesn't even matter skin pigmentation. Doesn't even matter sexual not orientation, but my sex, right? What happened to just justice for all and viewing it on its own merit and getting my day in court? So it is in ways an uphill battle, but we could instate the right individuals that are gonna look into this information, that also aren't corrupted and bought out. And that's where transparency is key. The government, it's all backwards. They know everything about us. We know nothing about them. We got to stop that. Like, that's not how this was designed. And when you look at these individuals, even sitting behind that bench, it's just like all these freaking fake politicians. Like, look at their bank accounts. Where's that money coming from? And it just becomes very frustrating, because the reality of it is, whether it's this bioweapon, whether it's the poisonous food, whether it's so many different things, it's not if, it's when you need to rely on that system for anyone and any of their family members. Then you'll show up, then you care when you don't get justice, or are you going to seize a moment for when you're taking the proper courses of action? And that countless others, literally, there are thousands that are taking this action. And so anyway, I guess just to close up the point is, like, I personally view, with enough people getting on board, this very well for so many could be the very direct course of action to essentially big payout, millions of dollars. Since we've become such selfish creatures, yeah, I'm trying to prey on people's selfishness to get on board. But the reality of so much of this, like, even if some of the vaccine injured, such as yourself, even got billions of dollars and you were given a choice, your full health back or these billions of dollars, I'd venture to say the majority of people would say, I'd take my health back. So money really doesn't fix much of anything. We got to rule out this freaking corruption, so no one else needlessly suffers like you have. So you end up filing through the District of Columbia, or where's that at now?
Yeah, so along with all my health ailments, I started developing very bad migraines. I started developing liver pains. I started getting shortness of breath, tingling in my head. And at that time, I could not continue. So along with all that I was doing, I was going to all my Veterans Affairs Administration, my medical appointments. So I was scheduled for brain damage testing, memory testing. It's called TBI testing, so traumatic brain injury testing. I was scheduled for my sonograms. I was scheduled for a CAT scan and an MRI.
Wow.
Now, I had no idea that all these symptoms that I was actually experiencing at that time were due to any type of countermeasure that I received. Now, as part, the study knew, the directors knew exactly what my symptoms would be and how my health. Yeah, I'm here, James. I guess we cut out.
Yeah, I suppose so. They don't, at some point, our conversations, if we do our job right, like, Zoom's obviously a corrupt platform. So at some point, I imagine this isn't going to work for us. So I've been gearing up, trying to use StreamYard and other things and really revamp the studio. But man, those upgrades sure take a lot of time, effort, and energy. But yeah, you super lagged out there. Couldn't really hear anything. It seems like we're still recording and you're back on. So I don't know if you can recall, just kind of go back.
Yeah, I mean, I could start back at the top. So basically, long story short, along with along with all that legal work that I had to do, I was actually experiencing a lot of medical symptoms and illnesses that I never actually had experienced before. So I started, like I said, I had extremely bad migraine headaches. I had extremely bad liver pain, shortness of breath, heart palpitations. I scheduled a myriad of appointments at the VA, the medical center, Harbor Healthcare, 423 East 23rd Street. I received TBI testing, memory testing. I received a CAT scan, an MRI, sonograms of my liver. I was diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease after the shot. The CAT scan didn't reveal anything, but at that time I didn't know that they were actually testing to see where the actual AstraZeneca shot attached itself to, because when you actually shoot somebody with AstraZeneca, they stated that it was going to stay on the site. So if they shoot you with AstraZeneca in the arm, it's supposed to stay in the arm, but now we know that it travels to all of your major organs, your liver, your heart, hence the condition of myocardia, your testicles, your kidneys, your brain, right? So they were looking for where the actual AstraZeneca attached itself to. They didn't tell me this, but that's what they were looking for. So after all this, I just received medication for my migraines, cholesterol pills, and was told, hey, listen, eat a healthy diet. Hopefully you'll get better. There's nothing else that we can actually do for you. I went to a hematologist. The hematologist took like 19 vials of my blood. Of course, they didn't tell me what was wrong with it, but of course, somebody examined the blood and somebody was looking at it, right? And amid all this, I was going to my rehabilitation for my knee, trying to do everything that I'm supposed to do for myself. The case, I just stopped even working on the case that was in District of Columbia because I was like, I'm wasting my damn time.
Right.
And just life came along, you know what I mean? Like I had to just go on with my life and, hopefully get better every single day, getting my knee better, working out every day, just leaving the past in the past. And I was just hoping just to forget everything. I moved down here to Florida from New York City, and I was just tired of the whole scene, tired of the like you said, the corruption, the uncleanliness, the homeless problem, the crime problem, and I basically just purchased my my new house down here.
Good for you.
And I'm formerly homeless, by the way, so I think it's really a good accomplishment. I mean, I don't need any type of pat on the back. It's just something I had to do for myself,
Wow. 100%. Well, what a success story. That's very wow to dive even into that maybe on another episode, and your battles there could be very inspirational for some folks that kind of have just thrown in the towel. And dare I say, this is the intended outcome they want for individuals. They want us demoralized. They want us broken. They don't want any patriotic. I mean, once again, it dates back to the Rockefellers. They invested billions over 100 years ago, even in our education systems, to create, quote, a nation of workers and not a nation of thinkers, right? So it isn't any secret. You can connect the dots since then to now is to all the different angles of attack, from the food to the childhood vaccines to the scamdemic and now these jabs. And it's just been chipping away at our God-given resilience. It does get to a point, and I get it. And you get all the grace from me dealing with a old school bioweapon in me called Lyme disease dating back to the Cold War. It was also effectively designed to just diminish your abilities and become kind of just dependent. And now you're so engulfed, encompassed in getting well, you no longer can effectively pose any threat. You more so become dependent on the system. And if they had their way, they'd be fully have us all indoctrinated to trusting those white lab coats, to showing up, just feeding us more and more big pharma. This pill will fix this but cause this symptom, so we need this pill to counter that, product and then this one to counter that one, and we just lifelong subscribers, and there's big money in that. They never, yeah, what idiocracy. Like for any of them to be like, yeah, let's get to the cure of cancer and put ourselves out of business. No business is going to do that. None. So they could project all they want, like they're on the cutting edge as they've done. But the fact of the matter is these companies have paid, like Pfizer. Bayer has paid tens of billions, like it's big money, but Pfizer has singularly paid out the largest criminal settlement throughout human history, period. Yet their business model was very profitable. They're still in business. They made X amount more than even paying that criminal settlement. It blows my mind as to how we've still lined up for their products, as to how we haven't exposed the whole infrastructure, like the World Health Organization and the CDC, even the FDA, just all this freaking corruption. And it's about time we clean house. 100%. And I'm glad to hear you're down in Florida. Those big cities, especially New York City, is, I mean, I grew up on the East Coast, and there was a time I loved the Big Apple. I thought maybe as a young lad at some point I'd be in that city, just, exposing life. It just seems so lively, but I wouldn't want to be anywhere near anything like that. It's been infiltrated, and what they're doing there is unbelievable. So I'd venture to say anyone holding out, I mean, sure, mad kudos, but I think it would be foolish to be sticking around those type of places. So now you landed yourself in a place that, hey, if you properly vet doctors that know, that have done their due diligence, and they've humbled themselves, and they're continually practicing medicine and educating themselves, that you could in fact get to the root of a lot of your symptoms and issues. There's a lot of breakthrough to be had. And with that, I would hope that you could even gain enough resilience to pick up where you left off, right? But there does come a point where we do need to really hone in and get well enough to be excited. Like, it's a challenge, but it's not demoralizing us, and the outcome is irrelevant. We have the bandwidth and the energy, the courage, everything we need, because truthfully, no one in their right mind, now knowing what you know, looking back, looking at all the egregious things and the cover up and the collusion, like, would accept that outcome, especially in your personal situation. So it just goes to show they have you right where they want you. And we can't just settle on that. So it's awesome to hear you're doing things to get back and focusing on your health. And that's what we're trying to even establish here with some of the affiliations with Bond Charge and the infrared sauna blanket, help eradicate the metals and just ramping up the body's natural ways of detoxifying the body. And the tincture masterpiece is also an affiliation of ours that has moved the numbers personally for me on heavy metals, even forever chemicals. But I'll be sure to send you a couple links. Maybe I'll even throw them in this episode on some things, natural remedies and things we could do to help eradicate some of them spike proteins and whatnot. Now, I know you mentioned, because with this, it's exposed a lot to you. You spoke out to me pre-show, kind of even in text, as to this just stolen money side of things, like just the sheer money, and like how they're essentially in their yachts laughing at us. Whatever, in your own words, could expose for the listeners today on that would be, I find, important.
Yeah. I mean, to my knowledge, and like I said, my legal battle isn't over. I basically discovered, upon logging into my VA portal to actually provide the CICP with some additional evidence, the fact that they deleted my CAT scan, my MRI, my sonograms of my liver, my vital signs, and they even had made some changes and manipulated my electronic medical record to suit their needs. So instead of putting down that I had 2 doses of AstraZeneca, they put down some made up dates about how I had 6 doses of Pfizer. Right?
What?
It's kind of insane. So after that, that made me actually initiate another lawsuit pro se, citing the obstruction of my CICP, which is a federal proceeding, and more negligence and more obstruction charges, because every single thing that they delete is an actual charge of obstruction, because I am engaged in a federal proceeding. So I sued the system administrator. I'm suing the system administrator at the VA, the person that's actually in charge of delegating the electronic medical records. I'm suing, again, the director, Melanie J. Stein. I'm suing her boss. But from my understanding and how it is, they have been getting paid steady on top of whatever they're making as a federal employee, thousands and thousands of dollars. The United States government purchased 55 million doses of AstraZeneca, knowing that AstraZeneca is the worst countermeasure throughout the world that had been stopped, that had been discontinued, and as of March of 2024 has been withdrawn from worldwide use by AstraZeneca. So basically, we gave AstraZeneca $1 billion in 2021 of taxpayer money.
Unbelievable.
For a countermeasure that is ineffective, unwanted, and causes the worst injuries that have been documented in the United Kingdom in a class action, in Australia in a class action, Canada, I believe, has a class action, and hopefully the United States is soon to follow. And that's $1 billion of the United States taxpayer money. And yes, they are on their yachts and they are in their helicopters and they are laughing at us. There is no doubt about it.
Dang. Yeah, it boils my blood. I mean, I could play this very clip of the CEO of Pfizer and how, he safe and effective. Everyone take it. But he himself didn't take it. And they're like, when are you going to take it? And just unbelievable. But the relations he established with Joe Biden himself, the corrupt administration right now that's ruling over us, enough is enough. We must do our part. Well, with that being said, there truly is a lot, Eric, that we could dive into. And at any point here in the near future, as you play this back, there's things we missed that you would like to discuss, or if there's any news, good news, bad news, any news, things you've found to be helpful for you, we would love to have you on, because you clearly are a warrior and you're not walking in fear. Like, I only fear God. That's the only healthy fear there is. And it took a long time for me to even acknowledge that. I used to biblically hate that kind of phrase, like fear God, but it's a healthy one because he's our greatest champion. So it's been a blessing for me at the point I value my spiritual life in death over this mortal life and death. So it's whatever we could do to have the positive impact. And it's irrelevant as to whether or not we win here or not. We just got to show up on behalf of our fellow brothers and sisters. And this is spiritual warfare. With that being said, do you have any other burning desires before we wrap things up?
Well, I wanted just to point out to the listeners and viewers that you can find the alleged results of the AstraZeneca 122 study on the NIH website. And I wanted to basically impress upon you to share this with your friends and families. If you know anybody with any bigger venues, reach out to them. And I would love to do any type of collaboration just to get the news out so that everybody can just wake up we can recover some of our money and hold these people accountable, because they are criminals and they have gone against all of their oaths, the Hippocratic oath, the way that they're supposed to care for veterans. And I love my country. I love my veterans. And I vow to keep fighting until there's no fight left.
Man, way to lead by example, Eric. That's what's up. Yes, listeners, I challenge you. Check out the links below. He's going to send us some good ones, but I'll also throw in the book to Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines, a story of hope for those who love liberty. It's amazing. It's exposing a lot of things, and it should light that fire. Also going to add the link of Freedom Fighter 1776. We need more people to show up on this militaryaccountability.net and sign this petition. These are all calls to action that are going to help create the momentum we need. And once again, check out our affiliations. Up Your Health. For those that haven't jumped on Patriot Mobile, what are you waiting for? It's time. We got a lot of listeners that are taking that action. It's amazing even to see them reap the benefits, having a security blanket and privacy, potential savings, and also upping their service. But it's so important that we stop funding the corruption. I know we just had a boycott call on an episode I just mashed out yesterday regarding Tractor Supply. I couldn't believe it. That store brought in a woke CEO, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars into wokeness, poisoning the minds of children, and hundreds of thousands of dollars anti-Trump going to the Democratic Party that is destroying this freaking country. And it just makes me sick. We must be aware as to the dollars we spend, where it's going. And we can't be ignorant, because so many of these companies are literally using our dollars for things we do not like. So where's the problem? Is it really with the corrupt company, or is it with the individuals that are ignorant or not willing to do their research or know better, and they're just not willing to make the proper sacrifice of self and drive an extra freaking block, 10 miles? I don't care what it takes at this point. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. So the choice is yours. I'm not here to tell people truly how to live, but if not enough people are doing it, or you're not doing it in a sense, futuristically, things don't get better, who are you to gripe? You knew better. Let's try to end on a positive note here, because I've seen on a muzzle chat here how we have in fact made a positive difference. I just would like to see your stories, especially our veterans and our heroes that put everything on the line, that faced such tyranny we civilians can't even freaking fathom, and that we get behind their message and just get it out there, because we're not going to resonate with everyone. So the more we get it out there, we will find those sleepers, we will find those patriots, we'll find those individuals, and that will create solutions. We'll bring more brilliant minds into the mix that, oh, check out this write-up, and we'll share that and get that around. It'll help us get organized. So I hope and pray our listeners, that resonates with them and we can get on board. So I thank you so much for joining us today, Eric. It was our honor, our pleasure. Anytime, brother.
But hey, James, can I give a shout out real quick? I want to give out a shout out to John DeLarme and the Forgotten Soldiers.
Yes.
Without him, I wouldn't have been able to actually connect with you. Great guy. It's unfortunate that they would treat so many soldiers, Navy personnel, airmen, Marines, Coast Guard personnel, and other DoD employees with such disdain, to actually kick them out after given so many years of their lives, even guys that just stood up and they were boots and they got kicked out after maybe a year or 2 years. But I could imagine being those guys that gave 20, 25,
Right.
maybe missing an arm and a leg or whatever it was. And I salute the guys that actually stood up. So it's also a shout out to the military back pay case and John DeLarme, and hopefully we can all get to this finish line together.
I appreciate that shout out, Eric. Thank you so much. John is such a warrior, such a stud, and what he's created over there with the Forgotten Soldiers and that podcast and bringing more hero stories to the forefront. That's another call to action right there. Listeners, go check out the Forgotten Soldiers. I'll also add that link in the description below, and let's just share that far and wide. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to continue to show up in this spiritual warfare. Get good versus evil. Let's go. Let's do what we can. And I know so many of you are. So my hat's off to you. Keep up the good work. Until next time, God bless.